Eleanor had lived a quiet life not by choice, but by the slow accumulation of years in silence. Her home was small, old, and filled with the weight of things unsaid. She had learned to move gently through its rooms, careful not to disturb the ghosts that time had left behind. Every morning, long before the sun rose, she would wake, make tea in her chipped mug, and sit by the window without expectation. It was the routine that tethered her to the world, a fragile ritual she clung to without fully knowing why. There was a photograph that hung on the far wall of the kitchen. It had been there for decades. Faded now, the colors softened by time, it showed a teenage girl standing in a field of wildflowers, the wind catching her hair as she laughed at someone just outside the frame. She wore a blue sweater, too big for her shoulders, sleeves hanging down to her fingertips. It had been her favorite. The image captured a moment that no longer existed, though Eleanor carried it with her everywhere. It was her daughter, Emily. Eleanor had been a young mother, unprepared and alone. Her marriage hadn't lasted. Her husband had left before Emily was born, leaving only debt and cigarette smoke in his absence. She never spoke about him, not because she was ashamed, but because there was nothing worth remembering. Emily had arrived into a world that was already weary, yet from the beginning she brought light with her. He was loud, curious, impulsive. She painted before she could write, scribbled on walls with markers, made worlds out of cardboard boxes and glitter. He filled the apartment with chaos, and with life. But Eleanor had been tired. Working long hours in a diner, then cleaning offices at night. The bills came in faster than the paychecks, and exhaustion crept in like rot beneath the floorboards. She loved Emily, but she didn't always show it in ways that mattered. She shouted more than she meant to. He forgot birthdays. She dismissed Emily's little stories with distracted nods. And though Emily always came back to her mother with forgiveness in her eyes, Eleanor could feel the slow piling of distance between them, like dust between floorboards, like snow on a roof. Barely noticeable at first. Then heavy. Then irreversible. Emily had been 17 the last time Eleanor saw her. That morning had begun like so many others. With tension, with sharp words, with something small that grew too big. There had been an argument. Eleanor couldn't remember the specifics, just that it ended with a slammed door and Emily walking out into the rain, wearing that same oversized blue sweater. Later that day there was a phone call. A car. A speeding driver. A wet road. Everything after that blurred. The hospital, the stillness, the formality of tragedy. Eleanor remembered the moment she signed the papers more vividly than the funeral. She remembered the pen slipping in her fingers. The smell of antiseptic in the corridor. And the deep, immovable silence that filled her lungs from then on. After Emily's death, the world seemed to close in around Eleanor. People tried to be kind. Neighbors left flowers. A pastor came by with empty words about peace. But nothing reached her. She gave away most of Emily's things, unable to bear the reminders. But the sweater, the blue sweater, she kept. Folded it carefully, sealed it in a box, and placed it in the attic where she wouldn't see it. It was both too much and not enough to hold on to. Years passed, though she didn't live them so much as endure them. She stopped painting. The radio stayed off. Holidays became dates to ignore. She walked to the store alone, sat in church alone, smiled politely when necessary. People aged around her. Children grew up and moved away. The world forgot her daughter, but Eleanor never could. And then one quiet morning on her 77th birthday, a letter arrived. There was no return address, only her name and street, written in unfamiliar handwriting. The envelope was cream-colored and slightly bent. Inside was a single page handwritten in careful script. It was from a woman named Anna, who claimed she had once known Emily in high school. They hadn't been close, she wrote, but there had been a winter day, cold and sharp, when Anna had forgotten her coat. She had been too shy to ask for help, but Emily had noticed. Without hesitation, Emily had pulled off her own sweater and handed it over. A blue sweater. The blue sweater. Anna wrote that she had never forgotten that moment. That it had stayed with her for years. She had gone on to become an art teacher, and that gesture of kindness, so simple, so spontaneous, had become a story she told every class. Emily, she wrote, had changed her life without even knowing it. Eleanor sat frozen in her chair, the letter trembling in her hand. She read it again. And again. The words pulsed like a heartbeat. For the first time in decades she felt something break open inside her. Not pain, not quite. something softer. Like the warmth of sunlight through dirty glass. That same afternoon, Eleanor climbed the stairs to the attic. It was the first time in years. The space was heavy with dust and she moved slowly, her knees protesting every step. She opened the old trunk with fingers that shook more from emotion than age. The tape was brittle. The cardboard fragile. Inside, wrapped in plastic and silence, was the sweater. It still smelled faintly of lavender. She brought it to her face and held it there for a long time. Her tears came quietly, as if they had been waiting all these years behind her ribs. A week later, she visited the community art center mentioned in the letter. She hadn't taken the bus in a long time. The building was worn but welcoming, filled with children and canvases and the smell of paint. Eleanor stepped inside like someone returning to a place they'd never been. She met Anna that day. A woman in her 40s, kind-eyed and surprised to meet the mother of the girl whose story she had told so often. They sat for hours, surrounded by the colors Emily had once loved. Anna showed her a painting. A girl in a blue sweater, smiling in a field of wildflowers. It was the image from the photo, reborn in brushstrokes. Eleanor began to visit the center regularly. At first she only watched. Then she helped clean brushes. Then slowly she painted again. Her hands were stiff but they remembered the motion. Her stories flowed more freely with each visit. She spoke of Emily's mischief, her loud laugh, her crooked drawings. The children listened. Some of them painted pictures of their own mothers. One boy, barely 8, drew a figure in a blue sweater and said, "That's you. You look happy." At home, Eleanor placed his crayon drawing next to the old photo. This time she didn't turn away. Seasons passed but they felt different now. Softer. Her house was still quiet but not empty. The silence no longer pressed against her. It cradled her gently, like a memory that no longer needed to scream to be heard. She spent her mornings in the garden, wrapped in the blue sweater. The flowers bloomed around her. Birds visited the fence. The tea stayed warm in her hands. And sometimes when she closed her eyes she could almost feel Emily there. Not as a shadow, not as a wound, but as something whole and light and carried forward. There was no redemption in Eleanor's story. No undoing of what had been lost. But there was something else. Something equally rare. There was grace.